In today's video, we're talking about weighing our food cooked versus raw. Welcome to the video, guys. My name is Tyler, also known as the Fit Chemist, and I help people take control of their lives by taking control of their fitness and nutrition habits so that ultimately we can lead healthier and happier lives. So if you're new here, welcome. Please consider subscribing and turning notification bells on. And if you're returning, welcome back. I'm so glad that you are here. Today we are back in the meal prep palace. I wanted to do a continuation of the last video in which we talked about the difference between using a food scale and using measuring cups to weigh your food or measure your food and how to track those calories and macros accordingly. So if you haven't seen that already, go ahead and check that video out. But what I want to do today is talk about something that I left out in that video, and that is weighing your meat sources or your protein sources cooked or raw. The short answer is that you can do both, and I'm going to show you how to do that in today's video. I would be willing to bet that most people are not going to use something like a measuring cup to measure and weigh their meat sources, because think about it, if you're doing something like a bag of rice or a thing of oats, you can just go ahead and scoop it and measure it out nicely, but a chicken breast or some raw ground beef doesn't really fit nicely into one of these. And besides, when you purchase those items, there's already a weight on the food label or on the outside of the package, which makes it so much easier to track than actually having to use something like this. I like to just use the weight that's on the package, so I always meal prep in 6 meals, whether that's lunch or dinner. So typically when I go into the store, I'll buy 3 pounds of some meat source, because if I divide that by 6, I know that I'm going to get 8 ounces of meat at each of those meals. I then go into MyFitnessPal and I just plug in 8 ounces of whatever meat source I'm having, and then it's a done deal. I don't have to do anything else. Sometimes chicken breast can be a little fatty, so I like to trim off that excess fat, and if that's the case, what I'll do is I'll just put it on my cutting board here, I'll trim off all of that fat, and then I'll throw all that chicken into a bowl and get the new weight. And then again, if I'm making 6 meals, all I have to do is divide that number by 6, and that will tell me how many ounces are in each of my meals. Plug that into MyFitnessPal, and again, it's a done deal. I think taking the raw weight and then just plugging that into MyFitnessPal is the easiest way to do it. But let's say you're someone who doesn't like doing predetermined number of meals. So like I said, I do 6 meals. I put it into my meal prep containers like this. But let's say you just want to bulk cook your chicken or ground beef or whatever it is and throw it into a large container like this, and you just want to go throughout the week and be able to grab and go. That's where weighing your food cooked might come into play, and I'm going to show you guys how to do that. The reason I don't like weighing my food cooked is just because it takes a little bit of extra work. So when we cook our meat, it's going to lose some water weight, right? So the raw weight is not going to be the same as the cooked weight. So whatever we have to do, we have to take the raw weight and we have to divide it by the cooked weight to get our multiplier. And then once we weigh out our cooked food, then we have to multiply it by whatever that multiplier was to get the raw weight, and then we have to track that in MyFitnessPal. So again, you can weigh your food cooked, but you still have to weigh it raw anyways. So if you're gonna weigh it raw, you might as well just track it raw instead of having to go through all that math. Nonetheless, we're gonna go through a real world example here. I'm gonna cook a chicken breast, show you guys the best way to cook a chicken breast, and then I'll show you what I mean by finding that multiplier. I'm gonna go ahead and tare this plate so we can get the weight of our chicken breast. Tare is just a fancy word for zeroing out the scale. So right now it's reading 0 grams, but I'm actually going to change that to ounces so I know how many ounces of the chicken breast there are. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. Okay, so this is reading 11.45 ounces. So remember that number for later. Today we're going to be seasoning our chicken with some Flavor God Sriracha. I actually have not tried this before, but it smells pretty good. Smells like a can of pizza Pringles almost, but we're going to see how it is. So we're going to season this. Season your chicken breast heavily because you don't want that seasoning and that flavor to fall off in the cooking process. So I'm going to give that generous seasoning both sides, and what I like to do is just press down the seasoning onto whatever meat I'm cooking, so that way it kind of like sticks on there, and then I'll just kind of repeat that process again. So I'm going to do that for both the bottom and the top of this chicken breast. And then we're going to go ahead and cook it. So what I like to do for all of my chicken breasts is I'll put some olive oil in a pan, and then I'll turn the heat to very high. And what that does is when I put the chicken in the pan, it'll sear the chicken, and that'll give it that nice golden brown texture on both sides. And then after that, I'll just bake it in the oven for like 8 to 10 minutes at 400 degrees. And that usually comes out with the perfect chicken breast. So today I'm not actually going to preheat the oven. I've got a little toaster oven that I'm going to use, so that comes in handy when I'm cooking something like just one small chicken breast. But again, if I'm doing batch chicken, I'll preheat the oven before I do this, season all my chicken breasts, sear it, then pop them in the oven. I'm done seasoning this now. You can see it's quite generous. Got some dirty fingers there, but that's all right. I'm going to wash my hands off real quick. And then I'm going to put some olive oil in the pan, and then I'm actually just going to grab the camera and show you guys how I cook this chicken breast. And after that, we'll come back, get the cooked weight, and we'll find out what our multiplier is. Say that's about enough. You just want enough to sort of cover the bottom of the pan. I mean, you don't want to drown the chicken in the olive oil, but again, you definitely want enough that's going to cover the chicken breast. So I've now set it to high, and we're just going to let this bad boy heat up, get nice and red hot, and now we're ready to sear our chicken breast. So while this is heating up, I'm gonna go ahead and put some foil on this small baking sheet, and then I'm gonna throw it in the toaster oven after. So I will do that real quick. I'm now gonna grab some non-stick spray. I use the coconut oil, but it doesn't really matter. But I always spray whatever baking sheet that I'm using. Here we go. Oh yeah, that's the sound you're looking for, baby. So like I said, we're just gonna let that sear on each side for maybe a couple minutes until we get that nice golden brown look. Then we're gonna pop it in the toaster oven. We're gonna go ahead and flip this now. Oh yeah, there you go. You can see it's got that nice sort of burnt, charred edge. You can see that a little better now that I turned the surface light off, but that's exactly the look that we're going for. I'm gonna let it sear on this side for a little bit longer so we get that same look on the other side. Looking pretty delicious. So what we're gonna do, pop it in the toaster oven. Let's throw it in here. So like I said, I usually do 400 for 8 to 10 minutes. So on this one, we're gonna do, we'll say 390. I'll go 9 minutes right in the middle. Typically what I'll do is I'll air on the lower side and I'll just check it to see like what the inside is like. So you want an internal temp of 165 degrees Fahrenheit if you're using a meat thermometer, or hopefully I can show you guys what it looks like cooked. Looks like I need to do some cleaning there. I'll meet you guys when this is done and I'll show you what the perfect cooked chicken breast looks like. Chicken breast is done cooking, so I'm gonna grab like an oven mitt type thing, grab the chicken out of there. Oh, that smells delicious. Grab yourself a fork and knife, and what I do is I'll just cut into the center. So if I'm doing this with a large batch of chicken, I will cut into the biggest chicken breast, because of course that's going to take the longest to cook. And if it's not done, I'll just pop them back in for another 2 minutes and cook them until they are done. So let's see what this looks like. There's a little bit of pink in the middle there, right? So we want the rest of it to look like this outside here, nice and white. So I'm gonna pop it back in for like 2 minutes and we'll see what they look like then. All right, now we wait. Take two, here we go. As you can see, it's got the nice charred look to it. And if we try to separate that, see it's got that nice white inside, nice and juicy. You can see over here, still got some nice chicken juice floating around. And I also checked this other side, so you can see that's nice and white. So this chicken breast is cooked and ready to be consumed. Now is the important part, because we need to weigh our cooked chicken breast and get that multiplier. So again, we're gonna tear that bad boy. It's still in ounces from the previous time that I weighed it. Just gonna transfer that over. So it's now showing 9.60. So I'm actually using my phone to film, so I can't just use that as a calculator, but I'm gonna put the multiplier on the screen. Moving forward, if I was gonna eat this, let's say I split it in half and I wanted to weigh it both times cooked, what I would do is I would take the cooked meat, put it on the food scale, multiply it by the multiplier, and that is what I put into MyFitnessPal. No more hockey puck chicken, guys. Look at the juice that's already coming out from this. I already showed you that it's cooked, but look at this. That's how juicy this chicken breast is. It's gonna be delicious. Let me cut it up and we'll do a quick taste test. I don't want to hear anyone ever tell me again that they have eaten super dry chicken. There's no excuses. Oh, look at that chicken breast. Tell me that doesn't look delicious. Oh yeah, here we go. live taste test. I've never had Flavor God Sriracha. That's delicious. It's got a little bit of heat to it. That was good. So we now know how to weigh our food raw and cooked. If we're doing cooked, we know how to find the multiplier. So I know that the example that I used was only 1 chicken breast, but the same thing applies if you're bulk cooking chicken breast. So let's say you're doing 5 chicken breasts. What I would recommend doing is just picking one of those chicken breasts, weighing it raw, stick a toothpick in it while you cook it in the oven, and then that way you know which chicken breast that is. Weigh that one cooked afterwards and find the multiplier, because odds are all of those chicken breasts will lose approximately the same amount of water weight. You don't need to do the multiplier for each individual chicken breast. Trust me, if you do one, it will be close enough. And ultimately, that's the name of the game here. You just want to be close enough, right? You want to be consistent with your tracking, and if you do that each time, you'll be consistent over the long term, and you're going to reach your goals. You could also weigh all of the raw chicken, and again, let's say you're doing 5 chicken breasts, you would find the total raw weight of those. You would then cook them, and then afterwards you could just weigh all 5 again, and that would give you the multiplier. Again, it's always going to be raw divided by cooked. And then once you find that multiplier, of course, you can just use that multiplier for the rest of that batch of chicken. But keep in mind, once you switch over to like a new week, or you're going to do a new batch cooking, you're going to have to find that new multiplier again. So I think it's easier to just take the raw weight, divide that by however many meals you're making. But again, hopefully now you have an understanding of how to find the cooked weight and how to use that to track in a tracking app like MyFitnessPal. I want to give you guys a couple of side notes before I let you go. The first one being that this method works with any meat source. So whether that's going to be ground turkey, ground beef, chicken thighs, you name it, any sort of meat source, it's going to lose water in the process of cooking. And again, you just do the raw weight divided by cooked weight. A second note that I want to give you guys is that if you are cooking with something like an oil or butter, make sure you track that too, because sometimes those can be some sneaky calories where, those are very calorie dense things. A tablespoon of oil has probably 100 calories in it. And if you're cooking with 2 to 3 tablespoons of oil, you're not tracking that. That could make a difference on your fat loss results or whatever your goal is. So keep in mind, track those things as well. The third side note is that you can do this method with things like potatoes or rice, but keep in mind, some things like those, especially rice, it will absorb water and actually be heavier than the raw weight. So when you're finding your multiplier, your value is actually going to be a value that's less than 1, because our cooked weight is going to be heavier than our raw weight. Remember, we always take raw divided by cooked. So rice is actually the opposite of chicken or any other meat source, because the meat sources get dehydrated, they lose water while you're cooking, and rice absorbs the water. The biggest thing is just to stay consistent. So pick a method, stick with it, even if there are minor errors in whatever method that you're doing. If you're consistent over the long term, those errors will sort of equalize out, and if you're being consistent, that's what's going to get you those long-term results. That's it for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments down below whether or not you guys weigh your food cooked or raw. And if you have any other tips for potential viewers, please feel free to share those down below as well. And again, if you are new here, please consider subscribing and turning the notification bells on, because I post new videos every single Friday and you do not want to miss when they go live. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.